Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Is the volume good?
Yeah.
Okay. So my name is Dorothy Scans, and I'm here to confess. I am by no stretch of the imagination an expert in container gardening. My husband and I decided not to do raised beds last summer, and so I did a kitchen garden on the deck that had about 60 pots. Not an expert, trust me. So the reason I took on this category was I wanted to help all of us, including me, learn from my mistakes. So that's what we're going to cover today. It's basically a potting 101. And I hope you enjoy. So we always have to go with the pros and the cons. Pros being, of course, pots are movable. They are easy to go, and the movable part is wonderful when you're overwintering. Trust me on that one. So if you choose to keep your plants in the pots, you can either store them in a nice, safe, sheltered place or bring them in the house. They're easier to take care of. I think they're easier to water. Not everybody does. And you do have more control when you have containers. You're not worrying about weeds as much. They don't tend to come into containers because you're using potting soil. You're not using the dirt out in your yard. So your weeds are almost non-existent in pots. The pests tend to stay away from those plants. I can't guarantee that happens always, but that's their tendency. Plus, you don't have to use a shovel. Tools are much easier. The cons, and there's always cons for everything. You do have to water much more often than you do outside in the ground. Imagine, now this is a 5-gallon pot. That soil is going to dry out much faster than your raised beds or your in-ground gardens. I found sometimes daily was not enough. So that definitely is a con. You're watering more, but you've got a smaller surface. Sometimes your plants can outgrow, and this is what I found on my garden, is I was using too small of pots. So that's my learning lesson for next summer. And unless you're, I don't know, let's call it a gleaner, and you go out and pay for pots, no, back up a step. If you're a gleaner and you go out and find pots and you don't care what they look like, there isn't a lot of cost. And I will give you a hint that Brothers Greenhouse, just north of Bellevue, has a spot where everybody brings their old pots and the greenhouses, dump their pots there. That's where I get most of my pots. I pick up the ones that still look good. And I've probably got a good 1,000.
Belfair.
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 Oh, what did I say? Thank you. Seattle native. So yeah,
You love those used pots, don't you?
Yeah.
Worth the trip.
I'm a cheap pot person. I don't pay if I don't have to. It's kind of halfway between Belfair and Vorst.
Yeah.
And who would want to live in a town named Vorst? I shouldn't belittle it, but it just seems like a strange name. Okay.
That was the first family that lived there.
You're right, it probably was somebody's name. Okay, so there's all kinds of containers. These all cost money unless you already have one on site. So I tend not to use a lot of these, but they're available. And so the types of containers, they all have their pros and cons, and I'll let you look up the ones you want. Basically, what you're doing is making a decision on form or function. If you really want a pretty garden, go ahead and invest. because these are gonna last for a long time. If you don't care, just go to Brothers and grab some of the plastics. But the thing about container gardening is that those pots are bigger. We're not talking about the little 4-inch, 6-inch pots. We're talking about the 5-gallon and larger pots when you do container gardening, because you want something very impressive. So I won't go over the pros and cons to these because I hope, well, let's see, is there anybody here who does not use Google? I don't see a single hand. Okay, so I'm gonna let you look up the kind of pot that you like and see, for better or worse, how it's gonna work for you. Because one of the things that you have to keep in mind is you need the right pot, no, the right plant for the right pot. There are criteria. And some of them, for example, the metal ones, they will not dry out as fast after you've watered them because there's no seepage out the sides of the pots. Whereas the terracotta pots, they actually draw water away from the roots. And so you want to keep those kinds of things in mind when you go to pick a container. You also, and you'll see a lot of pictures as I go through this, you'll also see things like little red wagons. Make sure you put holes in it. But if you've got an old rusty wagon on the property, fill that up with soil, with lots of drainage holes. Chairs, you've seen the chairs where there's a little bucket in the center of the chairs and the flowers and the vines are just outflowing. Window boxes, one of the things you have to keep an eye out for is drainage because they're usually right next to your house. And do you want that water constantly draining down the side of your house? So you have to kind of take every little aspect into your plan before you decide how you're going to do it. Let's see if there's any other here that cause a problem. Yeah, the fact that some of these are heavy. Your concrete, your stone, even the ceramic pots. This guy can weigh upwards to 40 pounds once you get dirt in it. I'm sorry, I'm trained not to say dirt. Once you get the soil in it. I just don't learn all the time. Okay, so take some pleasure in some of the sample pots that I've shown as we go through here. I use Google a lot, in case you couldn't tell. One of the nice things about using Google to get photos is copyright requirements say that if you use the photo for an educational purpose, and we all learned, those of us that they didn't pay attention in high school, but those who went to college, you always had your professors to tell you, educational, I can use it. So that's still the criteria. All right, I wanted to show you some DIY ones. Before I became a member, the Master Gardeners had made hypertufa pots. Now these look like cement or concrete, which I don't remember which is which once it's solid, but they're not. They're made of a lot easier or a lot lighter materials. Now hypertufas probably last, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. Anybody have a guess out there that? And so one year we made a whole bunch and brought them to our plant sale. Long time ago, I think nobody had the energy after that. But
It's fun for kids.
But you might have fun. It's the creative part. This is a grow bag. Not very expensive. I got this one on Amazon. And the nice thing about it is you can't overwater in this thing because it leaks out everywhere. So these are not very expensive, but you can also, if you have some landscape fabric at home, that you can literally, with a strong thread, sit down at your sewing machine and make them. So these are easy to do. There's all kinds of instructions on Google for making square ones and round ones. I keep thinking we bought landscape fabric to do our raised bed garden, and then we decided to take the raised beds out this year. So I have now a huge roll of landscape fabric. I'll find something to do with it, I just haven't figured out what yet. And as you can see from the vertical gardens, that those can just be about anything you want. You'll build your own stand. Notice up here, the shoe rack, the kind you put in your closet. And that, I'm guessing, is a fabric one. It'll last you for 2-3 years. And the rest are just, I just love the idea of being creative in the garden, to be honest with you. So I highly recommend that if you have the least little skill or a sewing machine, go ahead and give it a try. It's fun. So we're talking about growing almost any plant in containers. Today, I'm mostly going to be talking about veggies, fruits, and lost my train of thought there, sorry about that. I'll be focusing on the edibles, outdoor edibles, that's what I was trying to come up with. So we will be spending most of the time on the outdoor edibles, but I wanted to cover the little decorative, the annuals and perennials, and maybe a lot of you have heard the terms thriller, filler, spiller. That's again a design aspect, and you can see this one up in the top right, and the drawing there that kind of explains what all that is about. So your choice is to put together plants that go well together. Number one, make sure that they can be in the same pot, because not all plants work well with each other. And what they're going to look like when they're fully developed. Nice thing about those kinds of containers or those kinds of arrangements is you can cram them in there. Because we're talking with these arrangements, usually a one-year thing. Often that thriller is going to be a perennial, but the rest might be annuals. Or all the filler ones are annuals and the spillers are perennials. So then you would just overwinter, but you want to have it set up so that when the annuals have died back, it still looks good. So keep all those things in your mind as you're designing that kind of a thing. But for us, we're talking veggies. I have a couple of slides here that show you the number of plants that should go into a certain size container. Now, this is somebody's minimum recommendations. I went smaller this last summer, and I regret it because I didn't get as good a crop as I would have wanted. So I'm going to start adhering more to what these suggestions are. There was that little cheap aspect that said, oh, that's a lot of soil going into pots, but there's solutions to that too. So once you've decided what you want to grow, or if you even want to have edibles as a container garden, then pick your product, pick your harvest, and learn what you can about it. Now, I have never been successful with kohlrabi. I have never tried one. I want to so badly because I like sunchokes, and I think they're similar to sunchokes. And I've not had a successful kohlrabi yet. I'm just it's frustrating the heck out of me. But find the plants you want, and then learn what you can about them. And you can see that there are quite a few. Now, I do tomatoes really well. I've been doing Russian hybrids, not hybrids, I'm sorry, wrong word. Russian heirlooms for about, what, 5 years now, 5 or 6 years. So I've got about 35 varieties with seeds. I can do tomatoes like crazy. But boy, could I do lettuce or any of the others, just didn't work. So I know my tomatoes. I just have to learn my other veggies. And I can't emphasize enough that those seed packets are there to help you. When you get your seed packet, beds, learn what's on them. Because they're gonna tell you distance between plants. One of the biggest things, and I've talked to quite a few people who have said the same thing, you put your seeds in the ground and then you thin. Oh, I hate to thin. I hate it. I feel like I'm killing half the plant. See, I'm getting head nods out here.
Yep.
You have to thin. If you think about it, I'm trying to think what is, now coleus seeds, for example, are pretty small. And I do a lot of coleus because I just love that leaf effect. And if you think about it, a pack of seeds for a coleus, am I coming through okay?
Yeah.
Okay, a pack of seeds for a coleus probably came from one plant. And so what if you throw half of them away? What it comes down. Another one, poppies. I propagate poppies on the property. Those seeds are big. So I literally have to dump the whole seed pack I'll dump it into this and then just wait to see what comes up. And then I'll literally take out the ones that look the strongest and put them in individual pots. Don't worry about thinning. You have to do it. It helps the plants. Doesn't hurt them. But it is a hard habit to break. Oh, and a reminder too, as Mary said, we have our plant sale in May, and we probably, I know last year we had about 4,000 starts. We may or may not have that many this year because we had a bunch left over last year. If we have 4,000 and y'all come, then that just means we make more money to keep the program alive. But that's in May, and we do get a huge variety of veggies starts. And by the time they hit our plant sale, they're in pretty good shape because we kind of know what we're doing. Not expert all the time, but at least we know the basics. Now, if you want to start small, you've all heard about these little salad gardens in one container. This one happens to show 4. And if you notice, that top container is a 24-inch, which is a 25-gallon pot.
Wow.
So 5 of these. But you can take this container, 5-gallon. It's not the heaviest harvest you're going to get, but you could get a good 5 to 7 plants in here to harvest from. And one of the keys to harvesting is lettuce, for example, which is easy to grow, grows fast, but the secret to lettuce, and I learned this the hard way, is as soon as those leaves get big, take them off. Don't let the whole plant just sit there. Because what lettuce is doing is it's producing the ripe leaves on the outside, pushing up the new ones. If the new ones have nowhere to go, they're going to just stunt. So get those big leaves off, which means that you can have your lettuce in here if you're constantly harvesting, giving room to those younger leaves, letting them grow, and they will do it all summer long. So lettuce is a wonderful staple to have in a container garden. There are a few veggies that you don't want to put in containers. Corn is one of them. You could put carrots in containers if they're deep, unless you want little squatty carrots. One of the things I discovered on our property is we get little squatty carrots because the clay is so close to the surface. They just can't get down. So we've given up on carrots in ground or in the raised beds. Broccoli, I discovered, did not do well in a container. So there are about 8 or 10 online, you can look them up, that just don't do well. But if all your salad ones do, all your leafy vegetables do really well. So I highly recommend, if you're wanting to get started for the first time, this is an easy way to do it. Okay. The thing about raised beds is they're there forever. You're not moving them. Once you put them in place, they're there. Containers, you can put anywhere you want. And again, you're coming back to form over function. If you want it to be an impressive garden to, let's call it curb appeal. Or if you just want it to be impressive to you, then find a place where you can show off your garden. If you want it just to be convenient, like in our case, when we decided to go with container of veggies, we put them on our deck, which is, here's the kitchen, here's the deck. And way over there were the raised beds. So which are gonna get harvested more quickly. So we selected our deck, and John, my husband, raise your hand, John, show me now. John put 5 5-gallon buckets on our deck, which is at kind of eye level to the ground. And it was right next to a hose in the house, and he would keep those 5 buckets filled. So I had 25 gallons a day to water all the plants on my deck. It took it. It took all 5, because we started with 2 buckets and then went to 3 and eventually 5. And, but it was convenient because I would just dip a big pitcher in and go along and water everything. Now our deck is about 12 by 30. So it's a pretty good sized deck, and it's got a railing about yay high. So I had plants up here, I had plants hanging down, I had plants on the deck itself. I had a couple of tables with plants. I found every variation I could find to put these plants. I'm not gonna do so many next summer, but I'm gonna put them in bigger pots. So you wanna be near water, and you also wanna keep in mind any wind you might have. Now, John and I live in a kind of wind-free spot. We're in a little valley, and the wind blows across the top, but it doesn't blow us very often. So I don't know what the rest of the area is like. The wind can be a problem for things like peas and cucumbers if they're not cropped well, or even your tomatoes if they're not caged well. So that's another thing you want to be looking for. And I have this little picture of drip irrigation. And Amelia at some point last year had come by and said, you could do this whole drip irrigation all the way along. And it was such a wonderful idea. We didn't do it, sorry. But it is a wonderful idea. So those things keep in mind. Okay, the biggie, soil. You have options. You can go to any of our local places and buy them in big 2 cubic potting mix and big 2 cubic sacks. And what we discovered, and Nick and I confirmed, that you can get 3 5-gallon containers out of 1 2 cubic bag. Now, I noticed online when I was researching, those bags have gone up. Yeah. We have in the past, John and I will tend to watch Fred Meyer, and when they go on sale for $11, they pick them up, but I was seeing them upwards to $20. It was incredible. So, but that is an option. What you're buying is a good quality mix. It's got compost in it, it's got perlite in it, it's got soil in it, and it is sterile when you get it. So if you're gonna do just 2 or 3 pots, get a bag, put them in, it's gonna stay pretty weed free, and it's gonna give the nutrients it needs to get started. And I'll finish that pot in a couple of slides. But you can also look up your friend Google and find all kinds of mixes. Now the one I've got listed here is a homemade mix. The YouTube I watched on that, YouTube's my second best friend. Google's my first, YouTube's second. The one I watched on that particular one said that for him to do a 5-gallon using his handmade mix was about 78 cents. And that included some of the fertilizer that he put in. Now, compare that, even if you could get a bag, a 2 cubic bag at $15, that would be $5 compared to 78 cents. So you might want to look into that. And as master gardeners, we don't recommend any one particular brand. You just kind of learn what works for you and do that experimenting. Now, what John and I did do this last year is in 22, we took all of the containers of all the plants that had died that I've been working on for a couple of years and dumped them in our soil pile. And we have 10 cubic yards delivered from one of the local places. And that pile has taken, I think we've been working on it for 3 years now, that same pile. But we would take all of our used soil, dump it in the pile, cover the pile with plastic. John would cover the pile with plastic. And he does what I tell him. He's wonderful that way. And then when spring came and we decided to do this container gardening, we followed this overwintered mix here. Wheelbarrow there is to remind me. So he would put about a third of the soil in the wheelbarrow and then add some bone and blood meal. And you have to look at the package instructions for how much to add for the amount of soil that you're creating. And another third of peat moss and blend it as you go because this stuff's getting heavier and heavier in the wheelbarrow. So we're talking pretty good arm strength and a shovel. And then you add the cow manure. And what we discovered, we did 20 pots of potatoes, doubled the harvest, doubled it, just by using this overwintered mix. Unfortunately, we left it out in the sun to dry and they all turned green. We couldn't eat any of them, but we can replant them. So that's one thing I discovered. Green potatoes are poisonous. So in large enough quantity. And so, oh yes, ma'am.
If you use composted cow manure, can you use it the same season?
Use it
The same
the
season?
same season?
Or do you still have to over?
No, because what you do is you buy the cow manure in a package that's already been seasoned, is what it amounts to. If you go to a farm and get it, and the same, I think, with horse manure, yeah. let
Then
it
you
rest
have to
for a while.
overwinter it.
Yeah, because one of the things that's gonna happen in a container is, it heats up. And if you've got fresh manure in there, it's gonna turn into compost and heat and kill the roots and, so yeah, you have to be careful of that. But the prepackaged stuff, it's already to the point where you can use it immediately.
And you don't have to overwinter that,
Right.
or do you?
If you haven't used it, I'm sorry, nobody is hearing what she's saying. She's asking about, can you use manure immediately in a season when you get it? And as far as overwintering, I'm not quite,
Okay, overwintering, if you're using like fresh cow manure, you would want to overwinter it.
right,
Because it's gonna get hot.
right.
But if you're not using fresh cow manure, can you create that and not overwinter it? Like, will it, if it's composted cow manure, it's old, can you use it the
You
first
can.
season?
You can keep, yeah, you can keep using it.
Okay.
You can keep the plants in it, or you can do the overwinter process, yeah. But keep in mind that plants are taking every nutrient they can out of that soil. And that includes everything the cow manure has had. So by the end of the season, you really don't have a lot of value left in what you've got. What you have is volume, but you don't necessarily have nutrients unless you've been overexcited about fertilizing. So, but we highly recommend. In fact, John got real excited doing that. I think he had fun. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm going too far. Hold on. My apologies. There we go. Watering. How many people understand watering?
Depends what you're watering.
Okay, I didn't see a whole lot of hands. This is one of my biggest problems. And where I picked up a lot of good tips here. Again, we're down to that idea that you have to know your plant, know how it wants to be watered. How often, if it wants to be watered from the top, which most don't. Most would rather that you water at the soil level. That's one of the keys right there. Tomatoes are a very good example. Never water a tomato from the top down because those leaves just, they'll either rot or they'll pick up fungus or they'll get pests. So you want to be down below at the soil level, which is real easy in containers if you have remembered to leave a 2-inch headspace in the container. I have seen people who have filled their containers and mound. Don't do that, because the water just goes and right up, never even gets into the dirt. And dirt does not take water well. And I'm sure you've all had this experience. You may water like crazy, but it just, a lot of times just goes right through. And so one of the recommendations for watering is that, and this is one I'm gonna try because I'm guilty of put a whole lot in and then walk away. But one of my YouTubers said, water for about 5 seconds on each plant, walk along, water, 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 come back, do it again, 5 seconds. And what you're doing is you're giving the water a chance to go down without rushing through, is what it amounts to. If you fill that whole top headspace, dirt will have soil will have a tendency to just, call me on it. It will just go right through, and if you don't have a drain tray under your pot, it's gonna just go on your deck or on your patio or in the ground. So you wanna water conservatively, let's put it that way. Even though we're on a well, I hate the idea of just the water going where I don't want it or don't need it. So drain trays, water slowly, water the soil, and don't trust that the rain is going to do your job for you. Now, as we know, we're getting hotter and hotter summers. So your task in a container garden is to check it every day. Don't let the soil get dry. And like I did a class with some kids and I said, if you need to know when it's time to water, put your finger down into the soil to about that point. And if you, that knuckle. And if you don't feel water, it's time to water. If you do feel water, that means there is water deeper down and you're okay for a little while, but keep checking. And one of the other YouTube hints I got, and this is one I've never known, is as you're watering, and you know the water's coming out through these drain holes down here. If you see bubbles coming out with that water, that means you've got air pockets. Plants don't like air pockets. And what plants like is for that dirt to get compacted enough that the water hits every spot. So the air pockets are not getting water. And this gal said, well, just keep watering until there's no bubbles coming out. And that should solve the air pocket problem. So that was a tip that I think helped me a whole lot. And learn from my mistakes. Rain. I would assume that the rain was doing a job, and I'd go out one day and there would be these little wilty leaves. You don't want to let your plants get to the point where the leaves are wilting, because they really have lost their energy at that point. They'll come back, but they just won't come back as hardy. So just, again, keep your eyes on the water. All right. One of the things I learned as a Seattleite in my house is to put gravel at the bottom of pots. Don't do that. Don't do that. What you want to do is, if you're going to, put it somewhere where it might get blown over, yes, put something heavy in the bottom of your pot. But the whole gravel thing, that was in the old days, and we just don't do that anymore. Because for one thing, it clogs the drainage. And it can, in doing that, it can hold moisture in those rocks that then creep up and get your root rot. So not a good idea. What you can do is take some of your Coke bottle, plastic Coke bottles or milk bottles, squish them down a bit, put them in the bottom. Now this is strictly to save the cost of soil, because your plants really need about 6 inches of depth, your roots do. So why give it 16 inches if you don't need to? So do some filling with material that doesn't cost you anything before you put the soil in. If you have any landscape fabric, it's a good idea to put that over the top of that filler and then put the dirt on. So that lets the water through, but not the dirt. Soil. Old habits are hard to break. Fertilize. I didn't fertilize enough. But I also found out that because the pots were smaller, it really didn't do me a whole lot of good to fertilize. Another tip is, if you've got a heavy pot, you have a ceramic, stone, whatever, get it on a caddy with wheels. Because the benefits to containers is you can move them. So find things that make it easy on you. And by all means, lots of drain holes. Okay. Raised beds are big containers. So a whole lot of the same things I'm talking about here apply to raised beds, which we're going to cover just for a couple of minutes. There are raised beds, like containers, allow you to control your soil because you're bringing in soil to film. So that's definitely a benefit. You've got better soil. Our soil is not wonderful, our native stuff, as we have all discovered, whether it's rocks or clay or whatever. It's not wonderful. So that's why raised beds are so popular around here. Again, you're talking about form over function, and you want it to look pretty. And boy, I saw some gorgeous raised bed gardens when I was doing this research. The nice thing is the water stays, the raised bed absorbs water better. It stays in, it doesn't just go like it would just an in-ground planting. It absorbs it faster because you have put in what amounts to loose soil. So the soil is working for you a lot better. And it stays warmer because of the protection around it. Costs a little to build them, but most last for quite a while. We are taking our beds down. We've been there 9 years. We don't know how long those beds were there before we got there, but those are coming down this year because they have lived their life. We've been very proud of them, but enough is enough. So they don't last forever. And if you're going to build, and for example, this is a, Erica, is that bottom one considered a keyhole garden?
I can't tell from here, keyhole garden would have a compost in the middle.
Yeah.
Okay.
So keyhole gardens, and that is done with that little spiral thing with compost in the middle that feeds the entire garden. Wouldn't that be pretty? Talk about curb appeal there. The straw bales up there on the top left, Nick is going to talk about straw bale gardening, but they're just using those straw bales for surround. So basically the bales are just protecting what's inside that enclosure. Nick's going to talk about how to use the straw bale.
Yeah, that's a missed opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that makes sense. Why not do the whole thing? Okay, there's 3 types of raised beds. One is the kind that you just build a mound in your garden, and that's pretty much what we do at Catalyst Park. The other is if you build a frame that sits on the ground, and one of the best recommendations for that is find good wood, buy good wood, cedar, redwood, it holds up for a long time. Do not use treated wood. No railroad ties, nothing like that, nothing with creosote or any kind of oil in it. That's not safe for your food product. You can have all kinds of handicap accessible beds, taller ones. You decide what works for you. Are you at the point where you don't want to be kneeling all the time anymore? You build a higher raised bed with a little plank on the top around the side so you can sit there. You want to have them the right size, accessible size. Minimum width 18 inches is just enough to get a good prop going. 4 feet is great as long as you can get to either side of the bed. And you want to be 12 to 15 inches deep. You can make it out of just about anything you want. And again, get creative. We have let's see if this is the next one. We have a Catalyst, a community garden with 24 beds that we rent out every summer. And if you haven't been to Catalyst Park, I highly recommend you go, because this last couple of years, we've gotten in some examples of different types of raised beds. And if you go online to the handout site that Mary was talking about earlier, you're going to see about a 6-page PDF. Let me see what we've titled it. Okay, it says Community Gardeners Presentation is the title of the PDF, and it has 6 pages of really detailed information on building raised beds, different types. So I recommend that you do go ahead and find that. One of the other suggestions is that this is known as hardware cloth, that you lay that down on the ground and then put your raised bed on top of that. How many people have moles and moles? Yeah. Well, there's your secret right there. They can't get through that hardware mesh or cloth. Why they call it cloth, I'm not sure, but it is wire. If you're doing a raised bed garden with more than one, make sure you have paths that allow you to wander through, that allow you to get access to both sides of the bed. And if you want to invest in landscape cloth to cover those paths, that's wonderful. You could put down bark, could put down just about anything, but you want to keep it weed-free as best you can, because those weeds are going to work their way over to raised beds. And you definitely don't want them in your raised beds, because you put in all that good soil, and shouldn't be any weed seeds in that good soil you put in. The other option you can do is, anybody heard of a hugelkultur garden? Some of our MGs have. It's a concept where you dig a deep hole and you fill it with logs, sticks, limbs, anything off your property that you would have just thrown away anyway. You're filling in this hole, and then you're putting your soil on top. Well, you do the same thing with your higher raised beds, so you're not having to invest in so much good soil. And what happens in a hugelkultur garden is that all of this stuff you put in decomposes, becomes great compost. Your garden starts to sink down into it. You just add more soil to the top. And then you just have this constant rebuilding of this hugelkultur garden. And it's providing a lot of nutrients for your plants. So that's a definite plus. There's one, hold on.
How much soil would you want on top of that, what you just said? So if you put the
12
logs and
inches.
everything below, how much soil do you want above
About
that?
12 inches, yeah,
12?
12 inches. The recommendation says 12 to 15. I don't know what we use at Catalyst Park, to be honest with you. And I don't know if we have set up any of those beds as hugelkulturs. We do have one handicap accessible bed. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I was going to say that, I'm a master gardener out of Pierce County.
Okay.
And we had a huge horticulture in our display garden in Puyallup. And as it sinks down, you have to start putting more soil on top of it. And we had in some places 20 inches to 18 inches, depending what we were growing, because it actually grew beets and potatoes and it's,
The deep ones.
yeah, and it's a wild thing to look at. If you are a neat, tidy gardener, no, it's not gonna work. This is the wildest looking thing you've ever seen. Yeah, and
Okay.
they're
Yeah,
very
you
quite
don't,
nice.
they're not overly cultivated, they're just kind of.
Right, they're
Yeah.
just this big, it looks like a compost pile on steroids, actually.
So
And-
our person in the audience, for those on Zoom, was saying that Pierce County has a huge hugelkultur garden in their demonstration. Pierce?
Pierce, yes.
Yeah. In their demonstration garden that has now dropped to the point where they have about 20 inches of soil on top of it, because it just keeps kind of working its way down.
Yeah, but the advantage to it was all the raised beds and everything in our demo garden had to be watered all the time. The horticulture, it really held the water. It was
Oh,
amazing.
It also holds, all the organisms that are in the product that you use are introduced into your garden. which is
Right.
great.
The good stuff,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're very popular in Europe.
yeah. I'm assuming it's a German word. so-
Yes, it is.
yeah. So they were saying that the hugelkultur doesn't need to be watered as often because it holds water better. And it holds any of the good things that have come into the garden, the bio kinds of things, organic, whatever. But anyhow, but they look real messy. Okay. We're close to done here. Mine didn't look like this.
Whose garden looks like that?
I didn't take any pictures. I'm gonna take pictures this summer. But you can show, I mean, my tomatoes look like that. I'm good at tomatoes. But it shows you what you can do. Start small, go big if you want. And I am addicted to YouTube. So those 6 down there are they're almost my family now, to be honest with you. I have watched them so many times. Luke, and my gardener, taught me when he was 15 how to seed tomatoes. And he's the first YouTuber I found. I fell in love with this young man. He is now very successful in, I don't remember if it's Michigan or Minnesota, whatever the EMI stands for. Created his own fertilizer, has his own shop now, has a daughter. I watched him grow up.
All of 30 now.
Those
Yeah.
6, I highly recommend. Okay, that was pretty much it anymore. And I have no idea on timing, because I asked Tessa to warn me, but I never once looked at her. Sorry, Tessa. Okay, any questions? Oh. One last thing. 5 gallon, 3 gallon, 1 gallon. This is also a 5. And you can get just about anything to be a plant holder. We bought these one year and put all of our native plants in them while we were holding them over for sale. So it is limitless, let's put it that way.
All right, any questions,
Yeah,
Tara?
I was going to say, on some of your green pots now, you will find the squirrels and the rabbits love them because they're a soy product. They're using soy in them. And so if you see a whole side chewed off, you are not losing your mind. But you have usually a rabbit, sometimes a deer, and squirrels love them.
Very interesting. I'll just repeat. So just a point from our audience, Dale commented that a lot of the green pots are made out of soy and they do get chewed upon by rabbits and other
Yes.
little critters. Yeah,
what size was too small? Like, you said you would go bigger next year.
What size is too small for you, Dorothy?
You said you would go bigger, so what size are you gonna take out of your,
I did a lot of my peppers in 1 gallon. That was way too small. I'll go with the 3 gallon for the peppers, 1 each pot.
And for
Um,
tomatoes? And for tomatoes, how big?
Tomatoes, I do 5 or bigger because they have a lot of root structure. And the other one is onions. You can do 1 gallon pots. So,
Great.